Used EVs are kind of a new thing. They can be a little daunting. Are they affordable? We know a lot about what's going on in the US. Tesla used is almost as much as a new one. Leaf can be half price or less. It kind of depends what you're looking at. But in the UK, the picture is completely different. Or maybe it isn't. I don't know yet. We're about to find out. I'm Brian. Welcome to My Tesla Weekend. So I'm joined by Will from Tesla Jigsaw here. And not only are we going to be talking about used car prices, but also factories and incentives. This will be a short little chapter for that. And just EV adoption generally. Will, thanks for joining us.
Hello, you all right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how else to introduce myself. Hello.
Yeah. Well, see,
right.
Will and I are getting a little loose because we're on about hour 2 now, even though we've only recorded about 15 minutes. That's just we're having fun and we're hanging out. So that's what we're doing. Maybe next time we'll just record it and throw it up on Patreon because that's kind of fun too. Who knows?
More picking your brains, Brian, on how to be a YouTuber. That's
Yeah.
Less of that and more recording videos, I suppose, shouldn't we? Okay. So yeah, I've put together Let's get into it. I've put together a very short list, really, of used second-hand electric cars from the UK, which you may pull up on screen now. So this is. I was expecting more, I've got to be honest. I thought there would be more choice of used electric cars in the UK. This list hasn't really changed too much over the past few years. There's a few more added to it, obviously with newer models and more expensive models, but I didn't want to add those because, you're in the territory of brand new electric car prices then. So what I've done here is use the real world range. So just, don't shoot me if I've got it wrong. I might be slightly off with my mileage estimates here, but this is what I consider to be real world range for these cars. So if you've only got a budget of anything less than £10,000 in the UK, you're really looking at either a very small car or a car that's not got very many miles at all. It's not until you get to sort of the MGZS with a real range of about 150 miles for £11,000 in this case, that you've got a sort of fairly decent electric car there that could be perhaps for a single family car or your first electric car.
Yeah, new car prices at that point, because once you're up over £20,000, you're back into looking at cars that are new and have potentially more range, but certainly more warranty, more life left in them. Now, in the UK, I know we said we'd talk about incentives. So let's have that long discussion now. What incentives are available for new and used EVs?
None.
Okay.
Can we move on?
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody.
That's right.
It's unfortunate. We're past the carrot and we're onto the stick. Get an EV.
Yes, it's slightly disappointing because when I bought my Model 3 nearly 4 years ago, I had £3,500 off the sticker price to incentivise us to get into EVs. But the government has since removed that, and the only thing you can get is a charger for your car installed, but only if you're a landlord. So only if you're the landlord of properties. You can't even get one now for your home if you're a homeowner, which I'm a bit baffled by. I believe I've got that right.
Well, and that's strange because if you want it done, if you want people to make the transition, but I guess now that for one thing, it's expensive to offer incentives, and the other is that you reach a point where you don't have to, and I guess that's to a degree where we're at now. In the US, there are pretty aggressive incentives for both buyers and for manufacturers who make batteries. But the battery one is insane. For for each kilowatt hour produced in a battery, you get $35, and then another $10 if you also make the battery pack. So that means if you're putting a 100 kilowatt hour battery into something like a Model S, there's $4,500 going back to the manufacturer if you made the batteries and the pack. So it gets pretty aggressive pretty quick.
Yeah, well, it's amazing what you've got. It's the government's position in the UK, I believe, is to suggest that electric vehicles now are becoming cheaper. You don't need the extra funds to support it. I think that's the case. But I'm kind of a believer in what you mentioned as well. Like dangling a carrot is nicer than being poked with a stick. So to go to this 2030 pushback to 2035 now for the cancellation of buying diesels or petrols now. Yeah, the incentive was there to get people to switch to electric cars with a bit of a subsidy, perhaps, and that's been taken away. And now the incentives been pushed out to 2035. I think it would have been a great idea to have something like the Inflation Reduction Act, like you've got in the US, where you're taking massive amounts off the sticker price of a car. But there should be this lineup at some point where electric cars are meeting price parity with cheap petrol or diesel cars. I was a bit surprised at the prices of some of those new cars that we looked at earlier for the actual expense of them. It's very different when you look at the price of a Model 3 in the US to our,
Sure.
even at £40,000 for the base level Model 3, it seems pretty reasonable compared to the rest of the chart of electric cars that we looked at. But if it's a place in America, you're looking at like less than $30,000, aren't you, for a Model 3?
There are places where you can get under 30,000 with incentives, because there are also some state and local incentives you may qualify for. Now, you put together this really neat prediction chart looking at an EV versus internal combustion adoption. Walk us through that.
Well, I can't take credit for it. I don't know who put it together, but I stole it. So
Yeah.
to talk about this is the exciting path for the future of EV adoption. So at the top, we're looking at the collapse of the internal combustion engine business, and those big blue dots at the top there, plummeting down that S curve. And going up the S curve, you can see the battery electric vehicle blobs slowly climbing up. Now, if you fill in the blanks from 2023 to 2024, a battery electric vehicle adoption, I believe, it's gone from about 1 in 5 electric cars, I think, in August, dropped a little bit in September, but it's predicted to be something like almost 1 in 3 cars by the end of the year in the UK will be battery electric vehicles. So that's quite a jump. So if it gets to that green line where it says 1 in 3 by the beginning of 2024, and at the top there, we're looking at the ICE vehicle collapse as well. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Do you think that by the time it gets to 2025 there, we're going to see a 50% crossover point? What do you think?
If we don't, it's only because of production limitations. Well, I've been getting these very well orchestrated, well coordinated talking points showing up on both X and in the comments on my YouTube video saying, well, the EV collapse is here, it's over. We're seeing all these companies pull back from their EV ambitions, and that's because it was never meant to last. It was just a passing trend. And I say, what on earth are you talking about? In 2020, globally, we were at 5% EV adoption. In 2021, it was at 10%. In 2022, it was 14%. And the number for this year, and I believe it's year to date, is 17%. So it ain't going away. It is maybe not growing as quickly as we would like it to, but that's because you can only buy the cars that are for sale. And what we're seeing is a lot of legacy car companies are struggling to make compelling cars at a reasonable price, but it doesn't matter if they do or not. Even if you could roll back all the EV initiatives in the US, all that would mean is that Ford and GM would just become US-centric companies, because the rest of the world still exists. And they're still making these cars, and they will come to our shores. The reason we don't have Chinese EVs, apart from a handful of Polestars, is because we have a 28% import tax on all cars made in China. It's a long story. But once these Chinese companies set up factories in North America, Mexico, Canada, the US, they're no longer made in China cars. So they can make them and sell them and qualify for all the same incentives that any other car made in the US can. And those days are coming, whether the big dogs get on board or not. So do I think 2025? I think that might be a little ambitious, because I don't know if production can keep up with that number, but it is, I'd say by 26 or 27 for sure.
Yeah. Hence watching the drama unfold is the exciting bit, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely tragic for what I think is going to be a colossal amount of people losing their jobs. That's the sort of the bit that I hate. But just to watch this all unfold, I think that's probably hits the nail on the head there. While I like the story of Tesla and what's going on, this is so disruptive, and to be living in this moment to watch this all sort of come together is quite astonishing, isn't it? And yeah.
And then we've got England used to had a lot of brands, a lot of domestic car manufacturing. And those brands themselves may be gone, but factories aren't necessarily gone. You were telling me earlier of a couple factories that still exist making cars.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed on my search for how many electric vehicles are being made in the UK. Maybe I've missed a few. One interesting one I found particularly was a new Stellantis factory that's been built in Cheshire, which just builds EVs. That's in Ellesmere Port. That's the UK's only dedicated manufacturing plant for these vehicles. They only make electric vans though, so that's the Vauxhall Combo Electric, Opel Combo, Citroen E Berlingo, and Fiat E Doblo. Some lovely named vans there. Jaguar I-Pace, not built in the UK, it's built in Austria, which probably, I don't know whether people would know that or not. You'd assume that Jaguar is a nice British company, but now it's owned by an Indian company called Tata Motor Group. So Tata.
Well, and before that, I think it was owned by Ford.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
isn't it? So
it hasn't been a British company for a while. Then we've got there's a Nissan Leaf factory.
So yeah, this is in Sunderland. That's been there for a long time. It's Chinese owned by EASC, which is Automotive Energy Supply Corporation. They also have a battery facility next door as well, producing 38 gigawatt hours of annual output to the Japanese Nissan factory next door to it. That's great. I didn't know that until earlier today. And then the only other factory we've got in the UK is building Minis, so the Mini E. So not the world's most astonishing electric car, I have to be honest. I have driven one, was not that blown away by it. Certainly its lack of range was really disappointing. Yeah, I wish Mini well.
I wish them well.
Yeah, that's
the range is something like 100, 150 miles, as I recall.
Real world range is more like 100. Yes, it's not brilliant. Although my friend who's got one absolutely loves it.
There's a gentleman I know from the Oregon Electric Vehicle Association who has one, and same thing. He's very disappointed that it's so difficult to get service when he needs it, but he loves it. He's not going to sell it. And there are proposals for additional. There have been suggestions that new factories for automobiles could be made. Have you heard much about those?
Yeah, I've seen a few government headlines and talk about them wanting to ramp up production, but it was unfortunate that there was a factory that was a company that was started called British Volt, which unfortunately collapsed. They just couldn't get enough funding together or something for it. But yeah, I mean that's what I would have loved to have seen. Is the UK and Britain getting really involved in the battery mining and refining materials, battery processing? It would have been a great sort of lift for the EV revolution and sustainable energy revolution, I suppose. But instead we're going to have to be buying them in from other countries, which is disappointing. Mm-hmm. That could have been something to get stuck into. But the other there's one more vehicle that does get built in the UK that's electric, or so many people think, the London taxi. So the LEVC TX. Don't get too excited though, Brian. Did you know they've got a little diesel generator in the back? Yes.
No,
they're not fully electric, unfortunately. They look electric and they do glide around on just their battery use for most of the time. But like the little the BMW i3, they have that little generator engine in the back that kicks in as a range extender.
I don't think the US models of the i3 had the range extender. I don't recall them having it.
Yeah,
but I did get a chance to ride in one of those electric London taxis in Farnborough, where we met. So that was I forgot about that.
Did you hear the engine kick in?
Cheap. No. Nope.
No. So they don't claim it's an engine. It is just a generator, they say, but it kicks in when it needs that extra mileage. But I was a bit disappointed to find that out, really, because I was convinced they were 100% electric. Because when you're walking around London, most of the time they're just silently gliding by, like a lot of the buses are now, and other vehicles. It's great. So So that exhausts my list of electric vehicles that are being built in the UK. I'm sure there are many more. There's certainly a few like little startups and classic
Sure.
car um, bits and bobs
Morris.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool
um,
van, but I don't know.
I need to talk to you about charging in the
Oh, yeah,
UK.
please.
So obstacles to EV adoption is still, a massive subject in the UK. I certainly lots of my comments in the on my YouTube feed just to attack the fact that where you're going to charge them and what happens because they're always on fire and you can't go through puddles in electric cars, all the usual things that we get. But chargers, this point I thought was pretty interesting. So at the end of 2023 in October, there were 51,500 electric vehicle charging points across the UK, across 30,360 charging locations. So this represents a 45% increase in the total number of charging devices since October 2022. So, and in contrast, here's the fun bit, there are 8,300 operational petrol stations. So we've got 8,300 petrol stations, we've got 30,000 charging locations, each of them with many charge points in them. So we've got
Wow.
an enormous amount of charging locations now, and a lot of them are superchargers, rapid chargers, fast chargers. In my little town in Market Harbour here, we've got chargers everywhere in all the car parks. They're practically never used. I barely ever see anyone use them. Um, so it's definitely a point for the UK because we do live in a country where 30% of people don't have driveways. So yes, there are companies that are dealing with curbside chargers. They'll come and install it. They'll come and cut a hole out of the path for you so you can put your cable in it. There's a few things, but they cost a lot of money. They're still like £1,000 or something to have that put in your home or in your street. But you have to apply for it, and it costs a lot. So it's not until these charging stations, these typical petrol stations, turn themselves into rapid charging stations, where you can just drive there, charge for 20 minutes, maybe once a week, or something like that. And then at least it's more practical for those that don't have a driveway, who can't charge at work, perhaps. I just think there's this massive wave that's going to be coming where the usual forecourts of petrol stations are just going to be transformed into EV charging hubs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exciting. The question has to be asked, what about people who don't have driveways? What about people who can't charge at home? And that's the answer. And I'm excited for the number of level 2s out there that we might find at movie theaters or shopping centers, places where you don't want to charge in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, places where you need more time. And what I really hope to see more of, I know they've already got them at the Atlanta airport, is level 1 chargers at an airport. I'm going to be here for a week. I don't need all the juice, just a little bit, just enough. And for that matter, I am on level 1 at home. I've got a mobile charger that I've been using, and for my purposes, it actually works great. I have not had to use a supercharger since the first day I got it because I just don't go that far. I work from home, if you can call this work. But who does work a lot is my good friend Will from Tesla Jigsaw, who deserves a visit and a follow. His channel is very small, but everything he puts out is broadcast quality. I would say it makes me jealous and angry, but I know how much work goes into it, and I am not jealous of that. So check him out. He's a lot of fun. And for everybody watching, stay tuned, stay juicy, and let us know in the comments, what did we forget? You got to tell us because that's the only way we can get smarter. And so to all you other clever robots, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I can't wait to hear from you on the next one.
And they also have a battery manufacturing factory. They also have a battery facility